My mom knows when someone is gonna die. Naturally, most people believe that their parents are unique or special, and I'm no different. However, when I was around 16, I discovered that my mom was special in a very different way. My mom has the ability to predict death. I know that to most people, something like this sounds impossible or made up out of a movie, but there's no logical explanation for what she's seen. When she was in her early 20s, she had a dream of a closed coffin and a voice telling her, "You know who it is." A week later, my grandmother dropped dead from a heart attack. As creepy as this prediction is, there's one that still gives me shivers down my spine. One day, a friend introduced her to a cousin of theirs who had just given birth to a newborn baby. The night after they all got dinner together, my mother had a dream. In the dream, she saw a baby lying on its back, smiling and giggling. Suddenly, a large hand began to slowly wrap its fingers around the infant's neck. My mother awoke in a panic, unable to get the dream off her mind. To her horror, she received a terrible phone call. The newborn baby she had met only days before had died. When my mother asked how, her heart dropped. The child was strangled to death by its father. The dream she had the night before wasn't just a random nightmare or her brain playing tricks on her. It was yet another premonition, the second one she had since my grandmother. Though this story happened years ago, my mother's spine-chilling ability still hasn't stopped. Just days ago, a member of our church passed away due to a brain aneurysm. When my mother heard the news, she told me that weeks before it happened, she kept hearing a voice in her head that wouldn't go away. It whispered, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." If you found this story scary, make sure to leave a sub and a comment. But do you think you can handle the next story? I think I met a spirit residing in a mental institution. So, there was this abandoned institute in Indiana, and me and my friends always went there skipping school. There are tunnels below we explored, as well as closed off areas where the roof collapsed. Me and two of my friends, A and K, went to the basement of the first building we ever went to. There's obviously no lights, so we took some papers and burned them for light, and made a makeshift torch to travel. When we were done exploring the tunnels, we went back to the stairwell area where the room next to it had the fire. It was embers now. The room was covered in stacks of paper and metal shelves, so I get this idea to do a low kick to the embers and make a flashy, cool-looking kick through the embers. It was a terrible idea. A called it the Ken Firestarter kick, because I kicked the embers and they immediately engulfed the papers behind in flames. It was a big fire that happened literally in an instant. So we ran upstairs and explored maybe 10 more minutes. Then Kay says, "Dude, we gotta bounce," and points outside. The smoke was very dark, and there was a lot. So we ran as fire trucks went down there. When we heard the sirens, we dipped to the train tracks. We made it out. So the next day, my buddy A wants to skip school there again. So we go and get through the front door. Then from the basement tunnel entrance, a homeless-looking guy comes out and asks us what we're doing here. We told him we're skipping school. So he says, "I'm hunting for treasure here. We can stay as long as we want. Just don't burn the place down." I felt like this guy was off, like he knew something he didn't tell us. Then he said, "Be careful," and went into the tunnels. So me and A start traveling through and notice there's cops outside driving and parking out front. So we panicked and went to the roof. Then, when another showed, we went to the tunnels. We never saw the guy again. We went through both ends, and yeah, the tunnels go from every building. We should have ran into him again the way we went. He was gone. Didn't go out the front because of the cops. So, where did he go? I feel like he's one of the few people who went missing when the place closed. Still freaks me out to this day. He had to be a spirit. The Haunted House. About 6 to 7 months ago, my family moved into this house in Maine that was built in 1986. After we moved in, my mother became friends with the previous owners, a mother, father, and their son. Everything was fine for a while, but a month or two after moving in, things started getting weird. My father and older brother go to work at roughly 6:30 p.m. and don't arrive until 3:30, 4 o'clock a.m. Thus, me, my mother, and younger sister are home alone until they arrive home. We have a basement in the living room that was recently renovated a few months before moving in, and there's 2 rooms down there. My older sister's, who moved out a few weeks before, and my older brother's. Usually, my mother and I go to sleep 11:30 to 1 a.m. My little sister goes to bed a few hours earlier. So, me and my mom are mostly alone together in the living room. Our first little experiences were just hearing noises and small things in the basement, such as light footsteps and creaks. We thought nothing of it until it started getting worse. One day, I was in my room on my computer, headphones off, my mother in the living room calling with her friends, my little sister asleep in the room next to me. Suddenly, I hear a loud groan, sounding like a girl's voice, in the bathroom right next to my room. At first, I'm like, "Girl, why are you groaning?" Because I assumed it was my younger sister. A few minutes later, my mom walks into my room and asks if I heard it too. I say yes, and she tells me that it was not my little sister. Immediately, I feel a pit in my stomach. My mother heard it behind her in the living room, yet I heard it in the bathroom. There were no animals in the house, and my mother's friends on the call heard it as well. We locked our bedroom doors that night. I covered mine with my dresser, and she made me sleep with a knife just in case. A few days after that, just before bed, me and my mother started hearing what sounded like talking and light footsteps downstairs. It sounded like a man. It got so bad that she made me go in her room with her with knives, since my room didn't have a lock. The talking and footsteps got so loud that my mother called our dad and made them come home early to check the house, in fear of a squatter or something being in our basement. A moment while we were waiting in bed, I heard a voice talking near the window. I thought my mom was on TikTok. My mother then turned to me and asked if I heard that. Scared. When my father and brother came home, they found nothing. After that, I began hearing cluttering noises in my closet at night. I assumed it was the wind, although I was scared. The next day, my mother walked in my room in the morning and told me that she had spoken to the previous owners, who lived there from 2012 to 2022, and the mother had told her about her son. Her son was about 8 or 10 years old, and his old room was my current room. The mother said the son would talk to nothing and say he sees a boy in his closet. It turns out there was a young boy who died in the area and was following the son until they moved out. My mother said he might now be following me. Another time, I was in the kitchen at about 2 a.m. Everyone's asleep, and I was about to do the dishes. Before I started, I suddenly heard what sounded like a child crying. I immediately got worried because I thought it was my little sister, and I put my ear up to their bedroom door, but I heard no crying in there. I went back to the kitchen and heard it again before it stopped. Another time was about a month later. I was on a call with my best friend. Keep in mind, it's nighttime again. And I went to the kitchen to grab dinner. I came back with my plate and my friend asked what I was eating. And right when I responded, she was like, wait, stop. What was that? Was that you?" It turns out she had heard a low hum as I was speaking, and I did not hear anything. She said she heard it on the call at the same time I was speaking, so it couldn't have been me. Jogging ghost encounter. Alright, so anytime from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., I'll go on a jog. I'm usually up at this time, so it's kind of become a common thing now. Anyway, last night I left my house for a jog at about 3:30 a.m. I jogged for almost an hour before I started heading back home. I'm about 5 blocks away from my house and on a straight path to the corner of my block. I jogged 2 more blocks before I see a person 2 blocks up standing on the corner. I don't think much of this, even though it's about 4:30 a.m. now. I always see people out walking their dogs during my jog, so it's nothing new to see somebody out at this time. I'm now about a block and a half away from this person now. So I slow my pace because I'm coming up to an intersection and I assume they might have a dog with them, so I want to give them some time to start moving before I finish my final stretch home. I get to the intersection and look out for cars. When I look straight ahead, I see the person at the corner start to walk left around the corner. At this point, I finish walking across the street and pick up my pace. I get to the corner the person was standing at and look to my left in the direction the person went. I initially did this to check for a car, but I looked farther back to see if the guy was alone or walking the dog. But when I looked, I saw no one there. Now, it's not a big deal, maybe he went into a car or something, I thought. But I'm nosy and wanted to see if somehow it made it to the other corner before I could see. So I went up the block, took the left on the corner, and started heading back in the direction I came, but on the next block over. I apologize if that's a little confusing, but bear with me. The block I started on and the neighboring block to my left meet at one point like a triangle. Anyway, back to what happened. I started heading back. I ran up 1 block, got to the corner, and looked around while keeping my pace. I saw no one. At this point, I gave up on that person. I figured let me just go 2 more blocks up, loop back, then head home. I now get to the corner where I originally saw the person, and take the left so I can be on the straightaway back to my block again. When I turned the corner, I saw a person standing on that same corner. Now I make it about half a block up before I slow to a walking pace. I walk to the corner of the block I'm on and check for cars again. I look straight and the person begins to walk left, just like last time. I thought, wow, what a coincidence, and continued to cross the street. Now I wear glasses, but when I jog, I put them in my pocket because the sweat makes them slide off. I cross the street, pick up my pace, and get to the corner the person was standing on. I stopped at this point and looked left. I saw no one and thought surely I'm not that blind and put my glasses on only to still see no one in sight. I even took out my headphones to see if I could hear anything, but it was just quiet. Now, I know you might think I'm weird trying to see where these people are going, but to me, it was a challenge to try and make it to their corner before they made it to the end of the block. So at this point, I'm thinking, damn, I lost the challenge, so do another loop. So another loop I did. And when I got to the corner where I saw the person, I took the left and instantly stopped in my tracks. I saw another person standing at that same corner. I put on my glasses again so I could see better and start walking forward while looking at this person. I couldn't make out if they were facing me or not, but I thought there's no way 3 times in a row someone's on that corner when I get there. I started to feel like I was in a loop at this point, like some weird genjutsu. Anyways, this person does not move an inch. I walk to the corner and get ready to check for cars, but before I do, I stay locked on to this person to see if they are going to walk to the left like the others, but they don't move. I look to my right to see if a car is coming, then look forward only to see the person begin to walk to the left. Now I'm hesitant to cross. Why did they only move now? Surely it's not a coincidence for this to happen 3 times now. I took a minute before continuing to walk. I got to the corner they were on and looked in the direction they went. Nothing. Now I'm confused. They didn't seem to be walking fast, so surely I would have seen someone. So I figured, let me just go the way they went to see how long it would take to walk it. I have my glasses on and my headphones out at this point. I look around and no one is around at all, so I begin to walk. I make it about a quarter up this block when I get a chill down my spine. I stop walking and take a sec to try and understand why I'm feeling this way. I look behind me, and someone is standing at that corner again. I don't know what to do other than turn around and continue to walk. When I go to turn, I see from my peripheral the person moves. I turn back and they're now walking in my direction. From the little time I had to turn back again, I tried to see with the person's face, but it was just dark. They seemed to have a hoodie on. We are now both walking in the same direction, and I can hear their footsteps from behind. They're not close, but they're audible. I make it to halfway up the block before I decide just to peek over my shoulder, only to see no one behind me. I had just heard their footsteps, so I now stopped completely and turned around to confirm no one was there. Sure enough, no one is there, and my heart instantly drops to my stomach. I am now standing facing the corner where I saw the person, and no one is on the block. I'm trying to calm myself a little and think, maybe I was hearing my own footsteps or something. I turn around to just continue on home when I see someone up the block, now sprinting in my direction. Now it's 4:30 a.m., and it's very quiet outside. I can hear crickets loudly chirping, but the person in a full sprint heading towards me was completely silent. No sound of shoes hitting the pavement or anyone breathing. I was just frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening, staring at the shadowy person running at me. All I could do was stare, watching them get closer and closer. Until they were about 10 feet away, they disappeared, like they were never there to begin with. I snapped back into reality and just started taking off for home. I was in a full sprint until I got inside. I locked the doors and just showered, trying to make sense of this experience. I've got a new job, and it's got some very strange requirements. My new gig's got me working the graveyard shift from 7 in the evening until 7 in the morning. Sounds wild, right? Well, that's just the tip of the creepy iceberg. You see, every night at the stroke of midnight, my job is to hightail it into this bizarre secret room. Now let me tell you, the whole setup is like something out of a horror flick. The room, it's hidden away deep within the bowels of the building, down a narrow, dimly lit corridor that gives me the heebie-jeebies. The walls are cracked, and the flickering overhead lights don't help much. It's like a dungeon from some medieval castle or a scene from a haunted house attraction. My boss didn't provide much in the way of an explanation. Just handed me a set of old keys and said, when the clock strikes 12, get in there, lock the door, and don't come out until the morning shift arrives. Not exactly a reassuring pep talk. Anyway, the first night rolls around and I'm sweating bullets as midnight approaches. My heart's pounding like a drum solo at a rock concert. I clutch those keys like they're a lifeline. When the clock finally strikes 12, I make a beeline for the room. The door creaks open and I step inside. It's pitch black in there. I can't see a thing. I fumble around for a light switch and finally, I manage to flick it on. The room's strange. There are symbols on the walls, like something out of a cult's playbook. The air feels thick and oppressive, like an invisible weight is pressing down on me. I lock the door behind me as instructed and start to notice something odd. The room seems to be getting colder by the second. My breath fogs up in front of me as I try to make sense of it all. What the heck is this place? And then, as I'm standing there, I hear it. a soft, eerie whisper that sends shivers down my spine. I strain to listen, and it sounds like voices, like a chorus of hushed, ghostly murmurs all around me. They're saying something, but I can't quite make it out. Fear gnaws at me, and I can feel the seconds ticking by like hours. I want to bolt, to scream for help, but I can't. I'm frozen in place. My mind races, trying to piece together what's happening. As the night wears on, the whispers grow louder and more insistent. The temperature keeps dropping, and I can see my own breath in the frigid air. My hands are trembling, and I feel like I'm on the brink of losing it. Finally, mercifully, the first rays of dawn start to creep in under the door. The voices begin to fade, and the room slowly warms up. My heart's still pounding, but I know I've made it through another night. I stumbled out of that room, feeling like I just escaped from the clutches of some malevolent force. And every night since, I've been haunted by those whispers and the bone-chilling cold. I don't know what's going on in that room, but one thing's for sure. I'll never look at midnight the same way again. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't just quit that job on the spot. And trust me, I've thought about it. A lot. But there's something about that paycheck that keeps me going back to that cursed place, night after night. Maybe it's the way the world looks when you're staring down the barrel of unemployment. Or maybe it's just that morbid curiosity that keeps me coming back for more. So, I soldier on, with each night more terrifying than the last. Midnight has become a harbinger of dread, a relentless countdown to the unknown horrors that await in that room. I've tried to reason with myself, telling me it's all in my head, that it's just my imagination running wild in the dead of night. But deep down, I know there's something sinister about that room. As the nights pass, I've become obsessed with uncovering the secrets of that chamber. I've scoured the internet for clues, searching for any mention of similar experiences or haunted places in the vicinity. I've even asked a few colleagues if they've ever heard anything strange about the building. But they just look at me like I've lost my mind. One night, determined to get to the bottom of this, I decided to bring a voice recorder with me. As midnight approached, I gripped the device tightly, my heart racing. When I entered the room and locked the door, I pressed the record button and set it on a nearby table. The whispers started again, just as they always did. But this time, I was determined to capture them on tape. I strained to listen, my ears picking up the faint, spectral voices. They were speaking in a language I couldn't understand, a guttural, otherworldly tongue that sent chills down my spine. As the recording continued, the voices grew louder and more agitated. It was as if they were aware of my presence, angry that I was trying to document their existence. The temperature plummeted, and I could see my breath in the dim light. I clenched my teeth and held onto the recorder, fighting the overwhelming urge to flee. Then, something extraordinary and horrifying happened. A shadowy figure materialized in the center of the room. It was an indistinct, shifting mass of darkness like the swirling vortex of despair. My heart hammered in my chest as I watched in terror. The voices crescendoed, merging into a cacophony of shrieks and wails. The figure seemed to reach out toward me, its shape contorting and elongating as if it were trying to breach the boundaries of its spectral prison. I couldn't take it anymore. My courage shattered like glass, and I dropped the voice recorder, making a mad dash for the door. Panic consumed me as I fumbled with the lock, my fingers trembling. The whispers and the figure pursued me, their eerie presence clinging to me like a suffocating shroud. Finally, with a desperate twist of the key, I flung the door open and stumbled out into the corridor. The room seemed to exhale a malevolent breath as I escaped its clutches. The whispers receded, fading into nothingness. I haven't dared to listen to that recording I made that night. It's sitting on my desk, a silent testament to the horrors I've witnessed. I'm trapped in a nightmarish cycle, drawn back to that room night after night, even though every fiber of my being screams at me to run. And as I stand here, on the precipice of another midnight shift, I can't help but wonder, what lies hidden in that room? What evil have I unwittingly unleashed? And is this paycheck worth it? Hello, Dreadful Tales here. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment if you had chills down your spine. If you enjoyed this video, I am sure you will enjoy this one as well, so check it out.